Good evening, I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents, Major American Jewish Organizations, joins me tonight. After the day after, we turn to the fact that today is November 4th, 2010. 31 years ago, right now, after the midterm of 1978, led to a very rocky third year for President Carter. Right today, an event in Tehran that changed the world. The takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran by students. One of those students, it is generally understood, was Ahmadinejad. He had a different name then. Today, he is the dictator and usurper of Tehran. 31 years ago, right now, Tehran for 31 years has remained a dilemma for Washington. No matter the president, it remains a dilemma today. Malcolm, a very good evening to you. 31 years after the takeover of the U.S. Embassy. If we'd known then what we know now.
If only.
If only. We're going to speak of Iran much tonight because it remains unfinished business for the Obama administration. However, comparing the results in the election to the foreign policy decisions of the Obama administration, I would say that over the last few days of talking around the country to observers, there was no foreign policy in this midterm election.
Across the country, and with the people I've spoken to as well, the Republican and Democratic analysts say that foreign policy was hardly discussed, even AfPak, which early on, if you remember the campaign, Iraq was a bit of an issue, little bit about Pakistan, Afghanistan, but dropped quickly, and there was only one issue they said in all the elections, and that was of course the economy.
A surprising change from 2006 and 2008 when the Democrats were successful, because then Iraq was very much the story, and anti-war was the story, and George Bush's credibility was the story. But it was completely absent. Afghanistan was not there. None of the commitment to our allies overseas. Nothing about China. It was all domestic.
It was all domestic, but I think that there is an undertone that was reflected in that this was an election about policies, not personality, in terms of the president. It was a national referendum, even more than the individual elections. Obviously, the personalities matter, and the role of the Tea Party, so many other factors that came into this. But the clear indication is that this is a concern about the domestic agenda. People play to it. The question is how that translates. And coming at a time when Iran is rapidly moving into the next stage. There's a report now that Israeli intelligence has discovered 2 new sites for nuclear plants that they believe Iran is about to launch. When we see these nefarious attempts by Iran to infiltrate in Africa, in South America, but through Africa with weapons and smuggling to Gaza, but also establishing beachheads there as well. And I met some African leaders over the last few days, and all of them were expressing concern far beyond what I've ever heard from them about Iran. And as you said, this is the anniversary of the takeover. The question is, how much have we learned since then? They cut the subsidies by $100 billion. And now you have all these profiteers in Iran compounding the problem, so they're threatening to kill anybody who seeks to profiteer. At the same time, I just want to say that, to me, the most amazing story of the week, though, was the report that the spokesman for the State Department sent a birthday greeting to Ahmadinejad. And, here we have all these offers to negotiate. They're telling him there's no way we're going to agree to a compromise. We're not going to turn over the stuff. We're going to go and talk, but we're not going to talk about our nuclear program. So what are they talking about? And then we send these messages, which are just so ludicrous because it's the wrong signal. And that compounds then people's disbelief and discomfort with the direction the American policy is taking.
We'll discuss the Obama administration in Iran through this evening. I want to turn to a subject that's come up in Europe right now. I'm speaking to Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents, Major American Jewish Organizations. And this issue is within hours. It comes out of Jerusalem, a meeting between the United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary, William Hague, and the Israeli Foreign Secretary, Mr. Lieberman, has ended in a dispute having to do with British law. This goes back more than a year, Malcolm, to the threat of arrest that Israeli officials face in Britain because of what you'd have to say are arcane, deliberately arcane lawfare manipulations by members of the British Parliament. And Mr. Haig did not offer to resolve this to Mr. Lieberman's satisfaction. And so they postponed talks between the two states. What's the significance here?
Well, this is very significant because this goes to the heart of one aspect of delegitimization, which is the lawfare part, where the use of universal jurisdiction, which enables people in any country, particularly most European countries, the United States does not observe this principle, where you can bring a lawsuit against anybody, regardless of whether you were directly involved. And it enables them, therefore, to threaten to arrest any visiting Israeli and charge them with war crimes, even if they're not military personnel. This week, 3 of the ministers, in fact 2 that are considered very dovish, were canceled their trips, one to Spain, 2 to Great Britain, because of the threat of arrest. And the principle was long ago supposed to have been dropped by and a resolution change in the law adopted by the British Parliament, and the government had promised to do so, and has delayed it till now. And so Israel canceled a meeting. It's part of their joint dialogue, the military dialogue and strategic dialogue, was canceled because they said they can't afford to send officials to Israel until the law is changed. They will not reconvene. And the foreign minister, Mr. Haig, had said again, well, we're going to change the law, and each time they keep promising to do so, they have failed to do so.
The comments in Jerusalem also pointed to the direct talks. Now, this is a little vague, but William Hague saying that we're in danger of seeing the direct talks collapse. We spoke before the election, Malcolm, to said that they'd fallen asleep or they were forestalled. Are they now going to go back into action, or because I think the next stage was scheduled for Washington, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it is Washington. The UN tried to get it moved to the United Nations. The U.S. said that would not be appropriate and they would not support the move. The administration has been working all this time. They've been people going back and forth. Netanyahu said that the freeze is frozen for now until there's some understanding. And Abbas keeps moving the ball down the road, keeps indicating clearly he has no interest in negotiations. Fayyad even went so far as to announce
this is the Prime Minister,
the Prime Minister, who is the pro-Western, everybody's darling. He even went so far as to announce that in East Jerusalem they had been investing in a complete violation of all the understandings and investing money, putting people into schools and other things in East Jerusalem, which is under Israeli control. They're doing things purposely to tweak Israel and to make it impossible for Israel to come back to negotiations, and at the same time they keep raising the bar and raising the stakes for the return. The administration is working very hard to get it back. I think it will be interesting to see what happens now that the election is over.
Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents, Major American Jewish Organizations. Later on this evening, Malcolm and I will have an opportunity again to address the issue of Rachel's tomb, which is of special concern to the people in the New York area. This is a holy site that is being threatened now by manipulations, cynical manipulations of the Palestinian Authority using lawfare. I'm John Batchelor.